The investigation into the high school massacre is slow-moving and dangerous.
Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold had apparently committed suicide.
They were shooting anyone of color wearing a white hat or playing a sport.
In London and other major capitals around the world, the shooting grabbed the headlines, knocking the war in Kosovo off of the front pages. A Tokyo paper labeled America as a sick gun society, and Australia's prime minister called the shooting an act of terrorism.
Columbine is the retelling and analysis of the infamous mass shooting in Columbine High School by seniors Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold on April 20th, 1999. It sets out to shed light on humanity and the shooters and why they might have done what they did. They set out to break the past mass shooting record and documented large parts of their planning and execution process through basement tapes and journals. They created homemade bombs and had a large arsenal of guns. They set a decoy bomb to distract the other bombs set to go off at 11:17 a.m. However, the decoy ended up being the only one to go off. Frazzled by the failure of the bombs, they frantically killed many of the kids in the wrong place at the wrong time. However, many in the school were oblivious to the shooting until around halfway through, and the story took around 28 minutes to hit the air. Many concerned parents were set to wait in Leawood Elementary for buses of surviving students, and for many, ended up waiting for nothing due to a fake last bus. After the shooting, many students and parents suffered from depression, PTSD, and many students were unable to come back to the school due to trauma. While it analyzes the probable causes for the shooting and delves into the heads of the shooters and the effects of their massacre on the victims and the public.
Breaking news, there are now live reports that a school shooting has broken out at Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado. According to students, the shooters were targeting minorities and people of color.
Actually, the shooters were targeting their bullies, aka anyone with lettermans or jackets, also known as the jocks.
Actually, the shooters were part of the Trenchcoat Mafia and were obsessed with death.
No. That's completely incorrect.
No, you're wrong. Period.
This is all fake news.
I cannot believe you guys.
You're wrong.
This is all fake news.
No.
You're wrong.
This is all fake news.
Actually, none of that is true. In fact, it actually exemplifies a common theme of Columbine, media misinformation. Columbine was the first major shooting in the digital age, so it is much easier to spread what were thought to be facts across multiple news networks and eventually the world. But because of how digitally connected the world was, information was spewed out at incredibly fast rates. The first thing people heard about the shooting is what stuck, and that's what they chose to believe. David Cullen illustrates this throughout the book by including many rumors that spread among students and news agencies alike.
Another theme which was evident throughout the book was violence. Columbine describes the heinous acts performed by Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, and what each boy went through to reach the point of total annihilation. Dave Cohen analyzes the horrific details of the violence and how carefully planned each part of the boys' plans was. Cohen analyzed Eric and Dylan's psychology and how each one evolved over time, which eventually led to the massacre.
Boys responsible for the failed bombing turned shooting were Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. Each boy, while committing the same crime, had completely different personalities. Eric was a psychopath who utilized manipulation with extreme skill. While Dylan felt his isolation as loneliness, Eric saw it as superiority, commonly referring to himself as God. He was fascinated by the thoughts of human annihilation and loved explosions. Eric had a strong hatred for a multitude of things, and only liked things which featured harming others. Throughout high school leading up to the shooting, Eric grew more and more dangerous and rebellious. Dylan, on the other hand, was categorized as a follower rather than a leader. He was shy, depressed, and lonely for almost all of high school, and thought of himself as a seeker, a person always searching but never finding. Dylan often had thoughts of suicide and even took actions towards it.
That's why I can't decide whether you should live or die.
However, his religion kept him from killing himself. He was torn between the hope of love and suicide, and abused alcohol to compensate. Unlike Eric, who had a set plan of destruction, Dylan was a wanderer, not knowing where he would end up. Every so often, Dylan would snap into anger and share the belief of other humans being mindless with Eric.